Scared Stiff Part 4. Robert kept telling his son that if he had it to do over he never would have gotten involved with drugs or guns, he would have chosen a better way to be and not succumb to peer pressure or be a victim of his own greed. He'd lost everything, ranging from his family to his hope, and he didn't want to see the same thing happen to his son. Jimmy could not envision ever being in the same situation his father was in, ever. After hearing the stories, Jimmy was sure he never wanted to be in that sort of situation. With each new visit came a new scar or welt on his father's face, and Jimmy had become adept at hiding the pain he felt for his father. Prison life was wearing Robert down, and he pleaded with his son to never tangle with the law and do something that would get himself arrested. He told Jimmy, if he found himself needing something, he needed to ask or tell his adoptive family what it was and talk about it. Robert said if he would have gone to other family members and used his head instead of his burning desire for more, he would not have done what he did, and today he would be a free man. In school now and 17 years old, Jimmy was popular with schoolmates and kept himself out of trouble. His uncle and aunt, as well as their daughter, ensured that Jimmy had a nice home and felt loved and supported. The school, as all schools do, tried their best to ensure their students also received something of a moral education so that they would understand what was right and what was wrong. However, the difference between good choices and bad lay in our own free will, and so, the school also made it clear that every student had the power within themselves to make their own choices. Students attended every guest speaker possible that the school would bring in. Much of the education revolved around teaching students about how to avoid bullying behaviors and the dangers inherent in being a bully. Firefighters Against Bullies today is providing a safe haven for kids who were bullied. These safe zones were badly needed in virtually every community and every city. The problem was each case was unique because of the people or kids involved, so it was difficult to determine exactly what was needed. Schools would show slides and have lectures, but they were mostly seen as a small offering to make it look like something most helpful when in reality, it dimmed the real issue. In order to make a dent in bullying, parents needed to take a more central role. Parents needed to talk to their kids about bullying and truly take a larger role in their child's life. They needed to take an interest in what their children were doing and realize what they were really involved in instead of being increasingly wrapped up in their technology or other things that didn't directly involve their children. Jimmy had some close friends that he spoke with about the bullying and cyberbullying that was a big part of the issues at school. At least a third of the class were friends that just happened to live on the other end of town, even they had bullying or cyberbullying problems at school. A lot of it made the news. There would be stories about the occasional suicide. Students driven to take their own lives because of the extensive bullying that was going on. It was all too much. The victims were accosted from every angle and unable to escape the pain. They were choosing to either escape the only way they knew how or they would attack, taking as many of their peers with them and seemingly without warning. Virtually everyone had the most advanced computers or smartphones. Bullies saw this as a way to get at their victims without getting caught by school authorities. It was cleaner, somehow, and removed them from having to dirty their own hands. These pieces of super-fast technology became weapons in a battle that the victims were practically helpless against. It's easy to fight when you know why you're fighting, but bullies target their victims because they are a threat to them, not because they have done anything in particular. Many of the victims were easygoing, smart, and friendly kids, not really all that different than the bullies themselves, but the bullies wanted to take them out, and the victims couldn't understand why that was the case. They were powerless in a war they hadn't even started. With every suicide, the bullies would feel a brief flash of guilt, and some would get caught up in a heavy cycle of depression, but there was very little support available for the bully who now felt remorseful. They frequently were at risk of plunging into depression themselves, or continuing the cycle of bullying themselves, which would continue the problems at the school. Jimmy could remember how he once looked up to his father and had practically idolized him. Now, though, there was nothing to idolize. He barely saw his father anymore, the visits only depressed him, and though his dad was now out of prison, he was still lost, aimless. Jimmy couldn't ever believe someone could look so defeated. Jimmy was sitting in the school's cafeteria when a couple guys he didn't know came up to his table and asked to join him. Always the nice guy, Jimmy didn't mind, and soon the three boys were deeply engrossed in conversation. These were guys that Jimmy had heard ran with a rough crowd, but he was never one to listen to rumor. They had never caused Jimmy any problems, and so, Jimmy would still be friendly with them. When the talk turned to cars and other things, the boys asked Jimmy if he was really happy. Jimmy thought about it and answered that while he was okay, he hoped he would be able to make a decent living when he graduated from school. He even thought he may just get a good job instead of going to college. Soon after this, Jimmy met a girl named Callie. Callie was from a good home, had all the advanced technology and a steady stream of cash. Before too long, Jimmy and Callie were very fond of each other, spending every moment they could together. Callie's father had told Callie to watch out for guys who had come from rough neighborhoods. Callie's father had had far too much experience with guys who routinely took advantage of people. In fact, Callie's father had encountered Jimmy's father years ago. He was certain that Jimmy would be a lot like his father and was reluctant to see his beautiful daughter be with a rough kid like Jimmy.